In the quiet village of Susan's childhood, life was simple, but fulfilling days were spent tending to the farm with her parents and younger siblings. Laura and Ebuka's modest home, made of clay and roofed with thatch, stood as a testament to hard work and resilience. Susan excelled in school, her sharp mind earning her a scholarship to a prestigious university in the bustling city. There was the promise of the future, one that carried the hopes of her entire family. Her parents had always dreamed of their daughter's success. They saved every penny they could spare to ensure her transition to university was smooth. The journey was dusty. Village roads to the chaotic city streets felt like stepping into a new world. Tall buildings, unending noise, and strangers everywhere overwhelmed her senses, but she was determined. Susan knew her family's sacrifices had brought her here. She wouldn't let them down. University life was demanding. Lectures, assignments, and adapting to the city's fast-paced lifestyle. Susan struggled to find her footing, yet she stayed hopeful, driven by the dreams she carried from her village. Her parents regularly called to encourage her, their voices filled with pride. She worked part-time jobs to supplement her scholarship, barely managing to stay afloat. Then came the devastating news. Her parents were killed in a tragic road accident. Their deaths left Susan reeling. She returned to the village for the funeral, where grief clung to her like a second. Again, the weight of responsibility descended on her shoulders as she took on the care of Laura and Ebuka, who were now orphaned with no steady income and mounting responsibilities. The cracks in her determined facade began to show. Returning to the city, Susan felt the crushing pressure of balancing university with her new role as a caregiver. Her scholarship covered only tuition, living rent, food, and her sibling needs as mounting concerns. Nights became sleepless as she tried to figure out how to make ends meet. Part-time jobs weren't enough. She worked as a cleaner at a local restaurant, then as a sales assistant in a clothing store. But the income barely covered basic expenses. The guilt of seeing Laura and Ebuka live frugally in the village gnawed at her. Their childhoods were slipping away. While she pursued her dreams in the city, as her grades began to drop, the pressure intensified. Missing classes to work, extra hours left her struggling to catch up on assignments and lectures. A professor's disapproving glances felt like a constant reminder of her sleeping grip. One evening, as she sat in her cramped room, staring at overdue bills, desperation took root in her heart. She began to notice the whispered stories about students who found ways to survive. Girls like her, desperate and burdened, who turned to unthinkable means to stay afloat. Susan tried to ignore the temptation, but the pangs of hunger and the weight of her siblings' futures were relentless. Desperation has a way of clouding judgment, and hers was no exception. Started subtly, a casual meeting with a lecturer turned into suggestive comments. The promise of better grades loomed large. When he offered his help, Susan's initial resistance gave way to reluctant compliance. She told herself it was a one-time decision, a compromise for survival, but compromises often open doors to more. The first time Susan stood under the flickering streetlight in the city's shadowy corners, she felt a nauseating mix of fear and shame. The bright girl from the village, who once held her parents' dreams, now found herself hiding in the darkness, her mother's clothes were replaced with outfits that drew attention. She had taken this path not out of desire, but out of desperation. Susan learned quickly the city streets were unforgiving, and she had to develop a tough exterior to survive. The men who approached her didn't care about her story for struggles. To them, she was a commodity. With every encounter, she felt a piece of her soul chip away. But the money she earned kept her siblings in school and food on their table. That was all that mattered. Her double life became a tightly secret during the day. She attended lectures, keeping up appearances as a dedicated student. At night, she stood on the streets, her eyes scanning the road for potential clients. The transformation was jarring, but she buried her emotions deep, determined not to falter. The danger was constant. The streets were rife with violence and deceit, and every night felt like a gamble, yet Susan persisted. Her siblings' faces in her mind gave her the strength to endure. But endurance has limits, and cracks began to show in her physical and emotional health. She was spiraling, and she knew it. The long nights began, taking a toll on Susan's body. Her once bright eyes dulled, and her slender frame grew gaunt. Fatigue followed her like a shadow, dragging her further into despair. Her health deteriorated, but she pursued on, knowing there was no one else to shoulder her burdens. Her grades, once a source of pride, continued to plummet. She missed exams and struggled with assignments. Relying on favors to scrape by the university, whispers about her unconventional survival methods grew louder, though no one dared confront her directly. Susan's world shrank as judgment and shame encased her like a prison. Despite her struggles, she sent money home. Laura and Ebuka's letters were her lifeline, filled with gratitude and innocent hopes for the future. They had no idea of the sacrifices she was making, and she intended to keep it that way. Their dreams were her anchor, preventing her from being completely consumed by the darkness. One fateful night, Susan encountered a client who left her shaking. His violence was a stark reminder of the danger she faced. The bruises on her body lingered for weeks, a painful testament to the risks she took. It was a wake-up call, but she felt trapped, unable to see a way out. Susan's world began to unravel. As her body signaled, fatigue turned into a chronic illness, lingering cough, weight loss, and fainting. Spells became frequent. Companions, the stress, poor nutrition, and harsh conditions under which she lived were slowly eating away at her resilience. She avoided hospitals, terrified of the questions she would be forced to answer. The cost of healthcare was enough. Her siblings are unaware of her struggles, thrived in school. Their innocent letters spoke of dreams and a future free of hardship, fueled her resolve to endure. But the distance between them and the truth of her life grew wider. Susan found herself isolated, her secrets too heavy to share with anyone. Her classmates avoided her, sensing the rumors that clung to her name. Lecturers either pitied or took advantage of her. One evening, after a particularly grueling night, she collapsed in her room, alone and gasping for breath. She realized the full weight of her reality, the choices she had made to survive. She became a prison as her body gave way to exhaustion. She wondered if the sacrifices she had made would ever amount to the freedom she sought. Susan clung to the fragile hope that she could see her siblings succeed if it meant losing herself in the process. Susan's illness worsened, leaving her bedridden for days. The reality of the body breaking down was unavoidable. The nights once spent earning money were now spent in feverish dreams. Her weakened frame was unable to carry the weight of her choices. She tried to shield Laura and Ibuka from her struggles, continued to send what little she could. To their letters remained a source of solace, though they now felt like a double-edged sword, reminding her of why she endured, but also how far she had fallen. Her absence from the street did not go unnoticed. Debts began to pile up, and landlords grew impatient. Susan's already precarious, the situation threatening to crumble entirely. She could consider reaching out to friends, but shame kept her silent. The few classmates who had once been friendly now avoided her entirely. Susan forced herself to complete her final year. She clung to the hope that a degree would be the key to a better life. Though the road of graduation felt impossible, assignments were submitted late and exams were barely passed, but she scrapped through each success, a bitter victory. Her health, however, remained a constant reminder of the cost. As graduation approached, Susan reflected on her journey. The village girl with dreams of success had become a shadow of her former self. She no longer recognized the person staring back at her in the mirror. Yet, despite everything, she was determined to finish what she started. The degree she had sacrificed so much for was within her reach, and she refused to let it slip away. Graduation day arrived with a bittersweet mix of relief and sorrow. As Susan stood in her ill-fitting gown, she felt the weight of her journey pressing down on her. The applause that filled the air as names were called felt like distant, like a sound from another world. When her name echoed through the hall, she forced herself to stand tall, walking across the stage to receive her degree. The moment should have been triumphant, but it felt hollow. The price she paid for the piece of paper was etched into her body and soul. Her siblings were the first to call, their excitement and pride lighting a spark in her weary heart. To them, she was a hero. They had no idea of the shadows that had followed her every step. Their innocence was the one thing that fought so hard to protect. Even as she lost her own as the days passed by, Susan faced the harsh reality of post-graduation. Life jobs were scarce and her health was rapidly declining. Every rejection letter reminded her of the stigma she carried, the invisible scars she bore from her double life. Yet she persisted, fueled by the knowledge that Laura and Ibuka were thriving. Free from the burden she had endured, one evening, as she lay in a tiny room, coughing violently, a knock at the door startled her. It was her landlord, demanding overdue rent with no money left and no strength to argue. Susan realized that she had reached the edge. She looked around the room, her meager belongings, a testament to her sacrifices, had made a decision. One final act to ensure her siblings' future. She sold her most cherished possession, a gold pendant her mother had given her before she left for school. The money it fetched was enough to pay her debts and send one last sum to the village. In a letter to Ibuka and Laura, she wrote of hope and resilience, urging them to follow their dreams and promising to visit soon. She knew it was a promise she might not keep, but it was the only way she could protect them from the truth. Months passed and Susan's health continued to decline. She avoided hospitals, fearing both the cost and the judgment of strangers. Her body, once full of life and energy, was now a fragile shell, Yet, in her final days, she found a strange sense of peace. She had given everything for her siblings, and while the price was steep, her future remained her beacon of hope. One morning, a letter arrived from Laura. It was filled with joy, gratitude, sharing news of his academics, achievements, and Ebuka's blossoming talent for art. Their dreams were coming to life, and their words carried the love and hope that Susan had fought so hard to nurture. It was her legacy, a testament to her strength and sacrifices. On a quiet evening, as the city lights flickered outside her window, Susan closed her eyes for the last time. Her journey had been one of hardship and pain, but it was also one of love and resilience. She left behind a story that would inspire her siblings and remind them of the strength that came from sacrifice. In the village, Laura and Ebuka would later learn the truth about their sister's struggles. They mourned her deeply, but vowed to honor her memory by achieving the dream she had fought so hard to make possible. Susan's story became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, love and sacrifice could light the way forward. Thank you for listening to the end of this story. Please like, share, and subscribe for more amazing story like this. See you on the next one. Bye.